Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Some time ago in early December, I think of last year, I asked you guys for some character suggestions for me to draw because I wanted to do a giant sketch page of just like a few characters all together, and you guys gave me a whole bunch. I highly recommend that if you are looking for characters to draw, go ahead and look at the comments on that post and go ahead and draw along with me. So typically when I do canvas sizes for my sketch pages, I use like the default 5x7 that I usually do for like my smaller illustrations, or I do 8x10, which tends to be my illustrations for like larger sizes. So this time instead, I decided to make it 14x10, which is about 2 times the size of my 5x7, turned it horizontal so that we can have more of a landscape feel for our sketch page. So if you're unfamiliar with how I tend to do my sketch pages, or what even are sketch pages to me, I usually kind of like allow myself to doodle and draw starting on one side of like, let's say our canvas or our page, and kind of like branch out until we fill the entire space. So in this case, we are going to be starting off with a character that I am technically very familiar with, but out of all the drawings that I do today, he is my least favorite. And it might be because I know the character quite well that I dislike how much I guess like how I interpreted drawing him, I guess. So today we're starting off with Oikawa from Haikyuu. So for today's little sketch page, we are starting in the bottom left-hand corner, and then we're going to kind of like fan out in a way. So in this case, I'm going to go above Oikawa, and then we're going to work towards his right and kind of like fill in the gaps of everywhere else to kind of cram as many drawings as we can onto one singular page. And it was just kind of like something I liked doing in my sketchbook a long time ago, and I kind of like carried it on towards like my digital work as well. So in terms of like style plus like the way how I approach these a little bit, they tend to be a little bit looser and not quite finished. Obviously it kind of changes depending on my mood. Even though sometimes I refer to them as sketch pages, there might be like a drawing or two, typically like my favorite one or the largest one on the canvas, that I render pretty much like fully to completion, but then the rest of the drawings or doodles surrounding it kind of vary from how rendered or how finished they end up being. I think for the most part, all of these kind of roughly get finished to the same degree. I did end up, I think, taking probably an average of 40 minutes per character that I drew. So this is going to be a very long drawing session for myself. I did my best to kind of chop it up into more digestible footage for you guys. So I do apologize that the amount of characters that we draw today, it might feel a little bit quick for each of the characters, because let me actually go through the steps before we jump into the other characters and we move along too quickly. So to kind of keep my layer management kind of to a minimum, I am going to try my best to keep my layers to like a maximum of 4 or 5, and then continuously merge them towards having only one final layer at the very end. So for Oikawa, I ended up doing a sketch layer. After I finished sketching, I changed the kind of sketch color to be a lot warmer and lighter, and then I used the selection fill tool to color in kind of our base fill for our colors. After that, I'll alpha lock it, do all my rough colors, and then once I think the rough colors look, good enough and I have enough colors established, then I will go back to my sketch, alpha lock that, and then kind of soften up some of the lines. Because you can see here for Oikawa, there's some areas that have more like gray lines, other areas that have more like reddish brown lines. And I find it easier for myself to render and clean up the drawing for sketch pages if the line art tends to be on the lighter side, so that when I start to do kind of like the cleaner sketch on top and start to render, I can just do some darker, thicker lines, and it kind of makes things pop from my sketchiness or the rough colors. After that, I do a white border around Oikawa, and he's basically done. So I'm going to stick him into the bottom left-hand corner, and we're going to start off with our next character. I think it'll be kind of fun if you guys can try to guess which characters that I'm drawing, so I won't reveal the character too early on, depending on who we're drawing, until we start doing the, I guess like the rendering phase. So for this character, I did decide to place her above Oikawa, and this character is like somebody that I wanted to draw from the series quite a while ago, and I feel like there might have been some influence on Moriko's design based on her, kind of like subconsciously, because I kind of got into the series quite late. So I don't know how to explain it without spoiling it. So maybe I might reveal it a little bit early, but this character is from Alien Stage, and if you're not familiar with that, I highly recommend looking up what that might be. Just be warned that is kind of a little bit on the darker side in terms of its like storyline and the premise of it. But if you like good Korean music, I highly recommend just listening to the songs because they're very, very good. And if you have to have like a recommendation, I think it's called, I have to remember what her song is, but Blink On is really, really good. And it's probably my favorite song. And like, I think it's the most latest song that they've released. And then the one that she sings, I think it's called All In. So if you can't tell, well, I guess it might not be too obvious because of the way I've drawn her, but this is Huna from Alien Stage. So she's actually one of my favorite characters. She's probably like my second favorite character, I think. So I did get a lot of people requesting a person from Alien Stage. Some of them have been Till, and then the other ones have been Ivan. Ivan and Till are both characters that I do want to draw. Obviously, I want to draw Mitzi and Sua as well, but I feel like those ones gonna be more like personal drawings that I want to draw fan art of them eventually. Or maybe Luca. I like him visually, even though he's like probably my least favorite character personality wise, I guess. But yeah, for Hyuna, I hope my interpretation of her isn't too off. I'm basing this off, I think it's like the All In music video, her outfit and that, along with like the lollipop, the sunglasses and all that. And she was very fun to draw for the most part. I'm gonna preface this by saying that the first 3 drawings were done on one night and the remaining drawings were done on another night. And for some reason, I like the drawings that I did for the remaining... How many characters did I end up doing? I think I did 8, maybe? But the first 3 were a little bit rough, so I do apologize if those were any of the characters that you requested. Like I said, the sketch pages tend to be a little bit more on the rougher side, alongside with being a little bit more simple, because I don't end up doing them, I guess like 1 at a larger scale, and then 2, I'm not really like fleshing them out fully by rendering them or like adding proper lighting and all that. So we are moving on to our third character. I feel like Hyuna was a little bit easier for me to draw just because her outfit and design are a little bit more simple. Oikawa, I don't like how I drew his face, so maybe in the future I will do like a full Haikyuu series or something at some point because I love Haikyuu. But for our next character, so he's also a character that I'm technically familiar with, but it's only because I've played the series to some extent, but a lot of the characters I do not have like a super deep understanding or like any affinity or attachment to any of them because I did not play the game long enough for me to get to know them as well. But I know a lot of people love this particular rhythm game. So if you can't tell from his hair colors, this is Kamishiro Rui, and I believe a few people have requested me to draw specifically him, I believe. I'm not too sure why, but it was in like some other videos that every so often I would get somebody to be like, can you draw some Project Sekai characters? And Rui tends to be one of the ones that you guys suggest the most. I think her name is I think it's An, like Shiraishi An, because her character kind of looks a little bit like my VTuber model just because the color palette, I believe, as well as the way her hair is. She kind of has like the black hair to blue tips as well. So I know some people requested for me to draw her alongside with the pink-haired girl, I believe. I don't really remember her name. I don't know if she's Emu. So yeah, there's a lot of characters that you guys wanted me to draw from Project Sekai, even though I have not played it as much, but I'm a super big Vocaloid fan, so I definitely would like to return playing to the game, or at least try and learn more about the characters in the future if I do end up doing any kind of like fan art of them. So yeah, hopefully I will, because their designs are super cute. So next up we have our fourth character. So this is technically part of day 2 or night 2 of when I was drawing all these characters on the sketch page. So as you can see, the way how I format the sketch page is kind of like in a fanning motion. So we started with Oikawa, and then I ended up doing one above him and one to the right. And then to kind of make sure I don't have too many weird gaps, I guess, I'm gonna fill in the bottom right hand corner a little bit more. But I am going to have a little bit of a shortcut and add a very simple character directly in the right hand corner, because we are going to have a little bit of a empty space, which I did not know how exactly I wanted to fill, unless I do a more kind of a waist up of a character, but much more smaller, so that we can fill it up with like a character rather than just like full length of clothing. So now that we are on filling in the base colors for our next character, hopefully you can tell this is Himiko Toga from Boku no Hero Academia, or My Hero Academia. So from like all the BNHA characters, I have drawn her, I think I've drawn her twice technically, because I did like little sticker packs. I've also drawn Dabi, and I've drawn a good chunk of the main cast for stickers as well. And I think I've done a commission or two of Bakugo, and I forget who else I did a commission of, like the guy with like the yellow goggles, and his name is like Hawks or something like that. So to kind of give you a little bit more information, I did watch the series a little bit up to a certain point. It didn't capture my attention fully, so I never continued, but I always enjoyed seeing like more stuff about the characters as well as like the fan art and stuff. So I do have like a fair amount of knowledge, and I've listened to spoilers from like fellow friends who are really into the series, and she is one of my favorites to draw technically, just because her design's very easy to understand, I guess. Some of the other characters, I feel like their hero suits or just like their hair in general makes me want to rip out my hair, because it's kind of like the typical anime spiky hair or like defying gravity, and it doesn't really make sense. But hers is kind of more like two cute buns on the side. She kind of has like the choppy bangs and a little bit of like hair framing her face. Yeah, I had a lot of fun drawing her, and kind of like similar to how I ended up doing Rui's, I did more of a sketchier approach in a way. So I did leave a lot of my kind of like sketch still visible, and I kept everything very, very light, so that, or not very, very light, but light enough so that I could just go in with a dark color to kind of fix up my sketch to make it somewhat clean looking from afar. But if you look closely, you can see a lot of like my purple stray lines everywhere. So this one, I guess I just jumped right in, but this character is a little bit harder for me to draw just because they are on the very pretty side. So I would eventually like to do like a redemption piece, even though I'm not too sure if I'll really get into the series. So I believe some people have requested me to draw, I think it's the main characters from two different danmei. And if I'm correct, a danmei is a Chinese BL novel, I think, or BL story, whatever you want to call it. So I might refer to it as a danmei instead of like a manhwa or like as a manga or whatever. So I believe this character's name is, now apologies, I do not speak Mandarin, and I'm pretty sure their names are Mandarin and not in Cantonese. So I think it's Xie Lian. I don't know how to say it, but it's from Tian Guan Sifu. So I know Tian means heaven, so I'm assuming this is like heaven's official blessing or official heaven's blessing, something of that sort. I've seen so much fan art of either this series or the other one. I think it's called Modao Zushi. So I do get the series mixed up, so I don't know which is which. I just know like aesthetically one has more of like the lighter clothing, the other one has like the black and red, I feel like, just based on kind of like the fan arts that I've seen on Twitter, because I follow a lot of people who probably draw a lot of the fan art for a lot of like danmei, and I know these series are both very popular. I'm just not too sure if I'll get really into any of the series at this point, but if I do, maybe I'll do fan art of them. And this character, when I was looking up references, he is so dang cute and pretty. I kind of wish I did a better job of drawing them. I do apologize to whoever requested this that I probably did a very mediocre job. But a lot of like historical, I guess like manhwa, mangas, anime, or even like drama adaptations and stuff, I love that kind of time period. I don't know if it's because I grew up watching a lot of like TVB dramas where I would watch more like historical ones, and they kind of capture my attention a little bit more, even though like sometimes I don't understand what's going on because like, you know, like family lineage or like the different classes and stuff might get me a little bit more confused because my vocabulary is a little bit weak. it's still nice to see the designs for all the characters. Now, I do believe somebody did request for me to draw someone from Modao Zushi, so I do apologize that I only could do one for this particular sketch page, but in the future, I do plan to either ask for more characters, just kind of as like a reset, or to refer back to this particular little comment section and do another drawing session where I'll do another set of characters. Maybe I'll do it as an ASMR version, or we'll do it as a longer session so you guys can get more of like the process, because the amount of characters that I tried to squeeze into today's video, it definitely makes it a little bit harder to have just digestible footage where I'm not cutting out too much whenever I'm doing like the sketching portion or the coloring portion or the rendering process. So let me know if you guys prefer if I did a longer ASMR session for maybe round 2, or if you want me to do another real-time talking video where I do round 2 and we can do it as kind of like a longer format. So for this one, I guess to hide some of my mistakes and my disdain for how I drew this character, I ended up adding 2 or 3 blend modes. So I added an overlay to kind of make it on the cooler side. Then I added a multiply layer to add our shadows and kind of make it a little bit more so that he's kind of backlit to a certain degree, or kind of like side lit, because he does have like the rice hat behind him, or like the straw hat. And then after that, I added an additional layer of add to add our highlights. So after that, I ended up merging them all so we can start doing the render. And this is kind of why I mentioned that I had kind of like a maximum of 5-ish layers when I was doing the sketch page, because by the time I add the white border on a separate layer, I kind of merged that down to our finished character, and then merged our completed characters to the new character so that they become kind of like all forced to be on one little layer. I think it's also because like I don't want to really deal with too many layers if I'm drawing multiple characters, because oftentimes I will have at least, I guess, 3 layers per drawing, at kind of like as the minimum, unless I finish the drawing and end up merging them. But as we kind of like size up in Canvas, we do get kind of a restriction or a limitation on the amount of layers we can make depending on your device. So I was trying to go like fairly big so that we could do maybe half the canvas and do another video where I filled the rest of it another time. But the canvas size kind of rendered the amount of layers up to, I think, 3. So it was going to be very limiting if I wanted to do so many characters. So I did end up making the canvas a little bit smaller. So we only end up doing 8 for this one. Granted that I could have actually just drawn smaller and fit more characters altogether, but I kind of like just like, you know, sketching to see what feels the most natural and then just filling in the gaps. So our next character, which is character number 6 technically, is kind of my cheat character because they would fit in pretty much any space on this canvas kind of comfortably. So I did pick one that's not a human character, and it's also a character that I feel like most people are familiar with. So I have been a fan of Kirby games probably since I was in middle school, I think. I played so many of them, and they were definitely like one of my favorite as a series. So I wanted to include Kirby as it is one of the characters that were requested. I did kind of find it a little shocking. More than one person requested me to draw Luigi from like the Mario series. So next time I end up doing another session, I will include him. But I was just shocked because is there something that makes you guys compelled for me to draw Luigi specifically? I just found it a little bit interesting because he's not exactly my first character to think of for me to draw. Also, with that being said, I know the most, I think, requested character on the comments was from the series Bungo no Stray Dogs, I think. So from that series, I have already drawn Rampo, I believe is his name, in a different video. So this is kind of the reason why I didn't draw him or any of the characters from that series until maybe the next time, just because I technically have drawn him or like a character from that series before, and I wanted to just make sure that I can do the other characters justice by getting a little bit more information on them maybe in the future, or to actually take time to figure out which characters you guys want me to draw, because there were several repeats, but so many names were being thrown around that I was not able to remember who is who at the time. So I decided that I will put that for like a later session. Or Or maybe I'll do something else where I'll request you guys to list characters from your favorite series maybe, and we can do like a sketch page per series so that I can draw multiple requested characters on the same series without having to like dodge one because I've already drawn somebody from that series or anything like that. Yeah, because there's other characters that were requested. I think some people requested like Sailor Moon characters. There were some from Genshin was a lot, obviously. Honkai Star Rail had a lot as well. But maybe, yeah, I think it might be better for me to do like maybe series or like themed ones after I do another round of just like these kind of random compiled characters all into one little canvas. But let's talk about the next character. So I am going to fit 2 more characters on this canvas, including the one that I'm currently drawing. So this character I am familiar with by, I was going to say osmosis, but technically I've watched someone play the game twice. So there's 2 VTuber livers. I believe I watched Alban play it and I've watched Reimu play it. So this is Anya from Mouthwashing. So if you're not familiar with this game, I do believe that it has many different disclaimers and it's kind of dark, but the characters got a lot of love in a sense from their fan base or like from other people. I think it's just because the story is quite interesting, even though it's kind of dark and kind of messed up. So, you know, if you're interested, do search it up, but just be warned, I guess. Kind of a little bit of discretion right there. But Anya and Daisuke, I think, were the ones that were requested. I decided to go with Anya just because I think I would have had a little bit of a harder time interpreting a little bit of like Daisuke's hair. And I kind of like Anya quite a bit in terms of like her design and color palette. I think it's just kind of cute. So I wanted to draw her. But in terms of like relevancy towards this series, besides like me already seen people draw like a lot of merchandise and fan art of the series, especially from like I think the last month, 2 months ago, I guess. I think there was one live stream where a person thought my Kaisen thumbnail for the live stream was Curly, like the captain for their little ship. And I kind of find that funny because I was kind of not expecting to hear someone in my chat to mention mouthwashing at all. But if you have any opinions about it, do let me know, because I'm interested whether or not you guys are familiar with the series or not, since it was kind of one of the games that got really popular and a lot of people were kind of like hooked on to the characters to some degree, alongside with like discussion about the stories and like the relationship between characters, or like how things should have ended up or how things could have went better, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I just want to make sure that if you're not in a good headspace or don't like anything that relates to like gore, or how do I explain the other situation? I feel like it's a very sensitive topic, but yeah, just make sure to read up on like any of the content warnings, I guess, before reading it if you are someone who's sensitive to certain topics. It's just a good idea to keep your mental health in check just in case. So I feel like for hers and the next character, they kind of benefit a little bit more from like the chunkier outlines, or like the darker, not exactly scrunglier, but they're like not super clean. They're kind of like chunky and boxier style. Kind of worked a little bit better than more of like the delicate kind of line work that I like to do, or like have things tapered a little bit more cleaned up. The next one we're working on, I did struggle to draw to some degree up until like, I think up until I drew the eyes 3 times is what I'm trying to say, I think. So this has a very particular style, and I was trying to figure out whether or not I was gonna go completely like, oh, it'll be in my style only, or do I want to draw them as close as I could to the actual style that it's presented in the anime or in the manga. So I think if you're a fan of this series, you probably recognize the character pretty quickly, just because the way that they draw the eyes, and I guess like later on when I add in the color palette, it's going to become very obvious. Their aesthetic is very particular to like the series to my understanding, because I haven't really seen anything that's like similar to it technically. It's kind of like scritchy scratchy in terms of what I've seen like the manga, and it has very much more like choppier lines, which I kind of liked. And this was one of the series that I wanted to watch when it first came out, but I've kept pushing it back more and more just because I had no time. And unfortunately, I still have not watched this series or read it, but I know a lot of people really like this series, including one of my friends. So yeah, I'm very familiar with seeing this style very often. I feel like a lot of people also draw inspiration from this style whenever they're drawing their own characters and stuff. I don't know. The aesthetic of it's very cute, and like the coloring and all that for like, I guess like the covers of the manga I do like, as well as how they interpret it into the anime is very nicely done. I was just unsure how I wanted to do the eyes because I typically do eyes like in a particular way or format and add like specific colors, or like I like having the eye whites and then we have our highlights and stuff very prominent during the sketching. But this one's like the colors are a little bit more blocky. There's not really any highlights in the eyes per se for this particular character. I know the two other characters, I believe the eye shines are still prominent, but this is the character that I think was requested, which is Hanako-kun from Toilet Bound Hanako-kun. So I believe there was another character that was requested, and I think he was requested from other videos as well for me to draw him. And I can see why. He's a very cute character. I think the entire series is pretty cute looking to like for the most part to some degree, even though this is technically based off of a, what do you want to call this? I guess the correct term would be folklore, which I believe it's supposed to be Hanako-san. So it's like a girl who's stuck in a, I think it's like a toilet stall or whatever. I forget what it is, but I think she asks you questions, and basically no matter what response you give, she kind of drowns you in the toilet or something like that, or you're stuck in the bathroom with her. It's something like that. It's basically low-key like a ghost story in Japan. But for this one, I guess it's like a supernatural-ish ghost story manga, but Hanako-san is Hanako-kun. So yeah, I don't know the premise of the story too much other than seeing like snippets here and there when I was first getting released, as well as just like little bits of information when other people have drawn fan arts of like the 3 different characters that I've seen. Apologies that each little session was very short, but hopefully you guys enjoyed watching me draw. I think we did 8 characters today, and hopefully they covered enough of your guys' interests here, because I tried my best to not pick like one particular series to fixate on, even though there were a lot of characters that I personally would have loved to draw, but they were characters that I've already drawn in the past technically, so I wanted to pick pretty much all new characters. I've technically drawn Oikawa before, I forgot to mention that. So Toru is one of my favorite characters. I love pretty much all the setters in Haikyuu, so I've definitely drawn a lot of them, whether it was in my sketchbook or digitally as sketches at some point, or I've done chibi versions, and I probably continue to do so again in the future, so look out for more Haikyuu fan art because I've always loved Haikyuu. But thank you again for suggesting your characters to me for me to draw, and maybe I'll do another session again like this next time. So I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye!